Are you in a position where you're defined by your age, and that's limiting you to pursue a dream or goal you want to accomplish? The More Than Your Age podcast is about having conversations with women who fully live their lives without being dictated or defined by their age. This is a space to encourage women who feel blocked to pursue a dream or goal based on their life circumstances. Welcome to the More Than Your Age podcast. I am your host, Erica Pasvar. Let's start living life fully and become more than your age. Sometimes society, and maybe even listening to this podcast, contributes to this idea that we have to be doing big or great things in order to be successful. The pressure to have it all and do it all is so exhausting and honestly just not realistic. My guest on today's episode, Stacie Jones, and I talk a lot about those specific expectations and how that can play into our perceptions of what is important in life. Stacey did do big things with the Dallas Cowboys franchise to then leave the company to start something big for her, an athleisure wear company, to then slowing down, still owning the company, but just doing it in a less grandiose scale. I really enjoyed her perspective on goals and dreams, and then how her view on age and aging has changed throughout her 46 years in life. I can't wait to see what you take away from this great episode. Also, stay tuned to the end of the episode. I'm starting something new at the end of each episode, and I'd love to have you join me at the end. Enjoy the show. Joining me today on the More Than Your Age podcast is the owner and founder of Sun Lovin Roots and the host of the Sun Lovin Roots podcast, Stacie Jones. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, Stacey, we have been trying to get our interview in the books for a long time, and life has just happened. It's been so crazy. I think the first time, I don't remember what exactly happened. And then I had the day we were supposed to interview, the second or third time, I had my baby, and then we just kept finding. But we're finally in the interview process. And so I just appreciate you joining me. Another one of our mutual friends, Erin, highly recommended you. And so when you and I got to speak previously, I just enjoyed our conversation and enjoyed hearing your outlook on age and aging, and then kind of how you have had to morph your own personal views on your specific age and where you are right now. And so it just sounds like we align a lot with that philosophy just in life and everything. But I want to go back to your career. You used to work for the Dallas Cowboys. You worked with corporate partnerships and various events with the organizations. So how did you hear about the job? How were you able to get that specific position?
Yeah, we're going back a lot of years. So I started working for the Cowboys in 2006. The thing called, I'm going to really age myself, monster.com, where we used to put our, I think it was monster.com, we used to put our resumes on to get jobs. And yeah. So that is essentially how I got connected into the Cowboy organization. A recruiter saw my resume and then pulled me in, and then I started going through the interview process, and there was 6 people going for the job, then it trickled down to 4, then 2, then all these interviews, and then finally, they chose me, and that's how I started June of 2006. So we were still at Texas Stadium. Yeah. So it's been a bit ago.
Yeah. So what all would you do for the Cowboys? Because you said, what is it, 10 years that you worked for them?
I worked them for 10 seasons. So 2006 to 2016. I did a little bit of everything. I was in corporate partnerships, so client service. I was the executive assistant to our senior VP of that area, as well as I did our sponsorship events. So think golf tournaments to calendar shoots with the DCC, the cheerleaders. I did our sponsorship retreats. So I was kind of in and out of a lot of things in the organization. Yeah.
Okay. So in the midst of working for the Cowboys, you begin having these ideas of creating your own clothing line. How did this interest come to be? And was this something that you had growing up, or did it just all of a sudden happen?
Yeah, I've always had a thing. I've always been, I think, a fashion girl. Growing up, I was always begging my mom, like, let's go shop, take me to the mall. I want to like school shopping was back in those days, we had the catalogs and we were circle and I'd be like, this is where I need to go for school shopping. So I've always had a thing for the fashion. And then really in my senior year in high school, I started working Christmas at the Limited. And I just absolutely like loved it. And then I was like, you know what? I really want to go into fashion. So that was essentially what I was going to do. And just kind of different decisions I made, ended up not going to college in California for fashion merchandising, stayed back for, at the time was my boyfriend, which was really dumb. I don't ever do that. And then went to school at McMurray and then did the reporting. I was a reporter for about 2 years, anchor reporter, and then moved to Dallas and then started with the Cowboys and just kind of like trickled off. But I always wanted my own brand. I know I kind of go on tangents. I always wanted my own brand. So in high school and all that stuff, and even in college, I always think, oh, it'd be so cool to design. I was always thinking like, ooh, this would be fun. This would be fun to do. This is what needs to be like, this would be cool. Like all these little different things and just different patterns. And like I said, shopping was always my big thing. And so it was always brewing. And I think like working with the Cowboys and being able to, especially with our retreats and our, all the gifting that we did as an organization internally and externally, I was always involved with that. So that was always the most fun part of my job, especially with planning the retreats, was the gifting, what we were going to be gifting our sponsors, the in-room gifts, how it was going to look, and all those little details, and then just the gift itself. So, and yeah, I think it just kind of like spurred. And then eventually in 2015, when I started Sun Lovin Roots, it was like a now or never. Like, okay, I was really tired of wearing like just all boring athletic wear. And I was like, something needs to be changed. Like I want to design some cute tops that can go from the studio to the street, that had fun sayings on it, that just weren't your typical stuff that you were seeing back in like 2015. I mean, times it feels like so long ago, but it really wasn't. But yeah,
right. And then if you think about it, and after January, it's going to be 10 years ago.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so pause in the story for a second, because you said that you were a news anchor for 2 years, and that's a fun fact. So where were you news anchor, and then why did you decide to quit that? Obviously, you got the Cowboys job, but it's like, oh, that's a different.
Yeah,
like you said,
no, it's definitely like I never intended to end up in sports. First and foremost, I think that's probably one reason they hired me, because I knew nothing. I mean, I wasn't a big. Yes, I grew up as a Cowboy, like our household. My dad, Cowboy fan, Texas, born raised. So hello, but it wasn't like, oh, I want to end up in sports. Like I want to go into sports marketing. Never knew it really was a job, and so that was, I just kind of fell into it. In terms of when I was going to school, a communication major, I really was thinking, oh, like I think doing journalism, news, anchor, reporter, all the things. And so my junior year, I started interning at a local news station in Abilene. And then when I graduated, and yeah, so like my senior year when I was about to graduate, I got a reporter job and just did all that kind of stuff. So it was I thought it was what I wanted to do. And then when I got into it, I was like, oh, like it's not really all like glamorous, which a lot of jobs are. You think it's glamorous, then you get in and behind the scenes, you're like, this is not glamorous at all. But it was just really hard. A lot of the stories, like talking about death and just, we see the nightly news. Like it's not all like glam. And at that time too, I mean, reporters don't make that much money. So it was just kind of like, like, do I really want to do this? And if I needed to go to a smaller market to actually get some like grit and some experience versus just staying in the Abilene market and going from a medium to a bigger. So I needed to go and get more experience. And I just was like, maybe I'll just go on to Dallas and see what I can do. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah, that makes sense of wanting to kind of stay away from or remove yourself from what is not exciting things to report about because that can affect your mood and your overall well-being. And so wanting to stay away from that. Okay, so we shared, we mentioned you were with the Cowboys for 6 seasons and, having, 10. I'm 10. Yeah, I'm thinking 2006 is the sixth number that came in my mind.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
10, yeah, 10 seasons. And so having the Cowboys on your resume is really highly impressive. It's sought after. People want to work for the Cowboys. Like they want that esteemed notification, of who they are. And so I'm curious to know when you did have this idea to start Sun Lovin Roots and you're contemplating leave, stay, what did you wrestle with when you were deciding to start your own business and leave or to stay with this business, with the Cowboys where you could really kind of potentially work your way up into higher and higher positions?
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think it was just at that time, when I was creating SLR and then kind of on the fence of what to do, there was a lot of changes happening within the organization itself. And so I think it was just a really good time to be like, this has been like, it was kind of like a now or never. If I didn't do it now, I don't think I would have ever, I don't know. I just think it was, there was a lot of stuff. The organization changed, me just like, okay, is this really what I want to do? Like it was fun, but it was also very redundant. It was also the same thing kind of over and over. And I honestly was just, I think it was just, I was just really ready just to jump and just to go off and I just do my own thing. And so it really wasn't like a difficult decision. I think it was just a decision that it was just kind of like I had outgrown, and with all the changes being made, I was just kind of like, I think this is God's way of being like, okay, let's go. And my business at the time too, it was picking up, and I just couldn't focus on both either. Like there was just kind of like, it's either you do this or you do that. And I think it was just kind of, I was just kind of pushed in that direction of this is what felt right. So it wasn't that too difficult of a decision.
So when people have, like a side business, whatever that may be, and then they decide to jump full force in it, like you did with SLR, when they do that, it's really scary financially because, I mean, what if you fail? What if you flop? And so did you have finances set up? Like how were you able to quit knowing, like, yeah, business was good, but knowing or just trusting that everything was going to take off?
Yeah, I did have a little bit saved. So it wasn't just like this, okay, like, oh gosh, like, what are we doing? But it also, it is very difficult. When I talk to business owners now, I never just be like, oh, leave your job, just do it. Like, just trust it's going to happen, because you don't ever know. But I think at that time, I was 36 when I left the Cowboys. So yeah, I left it February 2016. So I just turned 36. I think that's my math's right. Yeah, 36. And I had that drive. It was kind of like there's no plan B. Everybody would always, if I was doing trunk shows and I would tell them like, oh, well, how'd you get it? Like, what'd you do before? I was like, I was with the Cowboys. Wait, you left? Like, what? They would look at me like I'm just kind of crazy. And it was just, they're like, well, what's your plan B if this doesn't work? And I'd always say, there's no plan B. This is it. Like, this is it. Like, I will make this work. And I think that is you have to have that fire. You have to have that grit. You have to have that grind, which back in 2015, 2016, that boss babe grind, that was a big, big thing. And like, there's a lot of people like now getting over that burnout of just hustle, hustle, hustle. But that's essentially what I did. And that's essentially, I feel, I don't ever tell people like, oh yeah, you burn yourself out. No, but you have to work. You can't just that's the thing. You're like, oh my goodness, like you did this. I'm like, yeah, but there were a lot of nights that like blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of tears. Like, there would be times I'd be doing trunk shows and maybe sell one thing, or it just wasn't a good trunk show, or whatever the case may be. I'd come home and I would lay on my floor and just literally cry and be like, what have I done? Like, what am I doing? I'd have my moment, and then I would pick myself up and be like, okay, let's figure this out. And then I would sit on my computer and I'd email out 100 studios and like get my line sheet out there. Every night I was always emailing. And I got a lot of no's. And then once I would get a yes, especially once I got like a foot into like a franchise, like a bar method or a pure bar, it kind of helped because if one studio is like, oh yeah, then another would see it. And then it just kind of trickled down. But there was a lot of like grind and a lot of tears at the very beginning and a lot of what in the world did I just do? But I also always knew that I just felt that this was what I was supposed to be doing, where I was supposed to be at. Yeah.
Like that you shared that there were hard moments and you was, if you got down and you would cry, but then you wouldn't let yourself stay there. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to get up and now I'm going to email 100 people or I'm going to 100 companies and I'm going to do what I need to do. There wasn't a plan B because as you were talking about that, I was like, oh, I wonder what she would do when she felt like quitting. But it sounds like you didn't feel like quitting. You pushed.
Yeah, I mean, I did push. I mean, there were thoughts that I'd always be like, maybe I should just like quit and go do something else. But then at the time being, I would always tell my mom this. My mom's like, well, what do you want to go do? And I was like, well, and this is probably it was probably like my first year as being a full time. So I didn't have any other income coming in. And I was just thinking, I can't go back. I can't go back to a corporate world now. I don't really want to go and have to like spend my time helping somebody else with their dream or their whatever it is. So it was just always like, okay, I mean, what do I want to do? And then it'd be like, this is what I want to do. I mean, how like sleepless nights or how am I going to pay the rent or what am I going to do? Or how am I going to do this? I mean, there was always something always worked out. And I always felt like when I was putting the energy into it versus just stagnant and sitting there and like worrying, like I'd have my moments and then I'd pick myself up. And then, like I said, I would get on my computer and I would be emailing out 100 studios a night. I would get on Instagram. I'd connect with people. I'd get my product into people's hands for them to see it and touch it and like give me reviews. And then I would be booking studios and pop-ups and just going in and getting my product in front of people. And that was like the turning point. And I mean, that's essentially how I built my brand, was doing pop-ups and wholesale. So,
yeah. So, okay. And I want to know too, when you decided athleisure wear was the route you wanted to take, because you said you would look at other outfits or, athletic clothes and just be like, they're kind of bland. So when you decided, okay, I'm doing athleisure wear, where did you know to start to get the right fabric? And like you would have the design, but how did you start with step one in that regard?
Well, step one, when I first launched SLR, it was, like I said, tanks, t-shirts, sweatshirts. So that was a little bit of like my foot into the business. And then the following year, as I was doing a lot of trunk shows and seeing like the shirt, the tanks, and then people would pair it with different leggings. And I was like, oh, like I want to be the whole outfit. And that's kind of how that kind of started. And I was tired of paying like really hefty price tags for leggings that would be like falling down in my bar class. And I'd always be yanking them up and they were just so ugly. They were all black. And so it was basically working with my t-shirt wholesalers company and then just putting fillers out for fabric and what's the best way to produce a good product, but I'm not going to be having to carry so much inventory and testing it out. But that,
yeah, that makes sense. So Sun Lovin Roots has been featured on Pop Sugar, the Oprah magazine, The Bachelor and Bachelorette. So all my fans out there, when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, go Stacey. And so obviously you did these trunk shows and you reached out to these fitness studios. So how were you able to get on Pop Sugar and attain Oprah and The Bachelor and Bachelorette?
So, okay, let's start with The Bachelor, Bachelorette, because we had a mutual from Aaron and Nicole who owned Bar Method South Lake, but Nicole was DCC cheerleader. So that's the connection there. Now you mentioned Aaron earlier. So with Nicole, there was a mutual friend, a mutual cheerleader who was on the Bachelorette or Bachelor. And she called me and was like, I've been chosen, but can't say anything. But I would love some SLR pieces. So I basically sent her like, oh, okay, like a box full of SLR. And when she was on it, like the girls in their little scenes and everything were wearing it for that season. And I can't remember what season that was. I should know that, but I don't remember. And then it was still when I was I still with the Cowboys. Maybe that was after I was the Cowboys. The timelines are kind of wonky, but Caitlin Bristow, who was on The Bachelor, then she was the Bachelorette, and then she got engaged to like Sean, I believe his name was. I know too much about this.
I do too. I'm like, I know who you're talking about.
Okay, good. I was like, she was married to him. And yeah, they're not together
and
anymore.
And then she dated this guy, and then now she's with this guy.
Exactly.
I know.
It's really weird that I know all this stuff. But she was it was right before I was leaving the Cowboys, and her and Sean came to a Cowboys game, and they were in a suite. And I ended up giving her a bunch of SLR as well. And she posted it out on her Instagram and things like that. So that was kind of like my connection with the Bachelorette. And then fast forward to 2020 for the Oprah, of all things that I got featured in Oprah for was mask for COVID. I was like, I've worked all these years and this is what's like being like talked about right now. But at that time, I was one of the first, they always say I was one of the first companies to start making masks that weren't just ugly. So my mask would match my leggings. So like I had like a wine mask, so it would match my wine leggings, avocado. So like that. So, and the one that was featured in Oprah was my palmy tree, mask. And so of all things, it was just, it was crazy. I was like, okay, well, I'm in there. I am in there. So that is a fun fact. And then the Pop Sugar, that just came from, I believe, Oprah. And it was just, and those it was my actual like leggings. It wasn't just a mask, but it was it was kind of a whirlwind back in 2020 when everything, especially when my business was focused mostly on in-person pop-ups at fitness studios and wholesaling to fitness studios. Well, what industry was hit the most? Fitness, like studios, especially on the West Coast, where a lot of my wholesalers were. They closed down immediately. So it was actually like I guess a blessing in disguise. I don't know, just one of those weird universe like moments of, okay, well, here you go. So it was still brand recognition and got a lot of people exposed to the brand from Oprah.
Yeah, that's really neat. I mean, and you always hear like it takes just one person who can really influence the decision of other people, and the other people see it and then they love it, and then it just keeps going and trickling down. So at first it was sending out all those emails, email after email. I want to get to more in the between too, but I am curious to know now, what are a lot of those fitness studios still regulars? Is it like, what has been a shift that either you've had to make as far as with your clothing design and getting the information out there? Because I know you revamped recently too with you had a new line.
So, okay. So I feel like the first from 15 to 2020, that was like a year. Those are my years of like hustling, grinding. I was just doing whatever it took to get my brand out there. I mean, I basically in 2017, 2018, sold all my belongings and headed to the West Coast. I was like a little gypsy, like a brand gypsy. Basically did the Airbnb thing, was in San Diego-ish area, and just got there and just started calling studios asking to come in to do pop-ups. So I did that for about like 8-ish months. I was out there, did it from like Arizona to San Diego, then up to the Seattle, Utah, Oregon, Boise area. So I was all over the West Coast at that point. So then 2020 happened, and then things just kind of shifted. And I always say that these past almost 5 years, we're going into 2025. It's been pivot after pivot after pivot. And I always tell especially when I'm working with other business owners, it's like you have to the pivot. Like you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to navigate. Like entrepreneurship is not linear. It's always up and down a roller coaster, as you know. I mean, it's not just like, oh, I was an Oprah and I was just going up, and then after that it went down, and then it went up, and then it went down. I mean, it's never just this one thing, because you always have these like growth it's like breathing, like you like expand, retract, expand, retract. It's always going in and out. So I feel like the past nearly 5 years have been my pivot years. After 2020, after everything was still kind of trying to get back to normal, a lot of those studios, unfortunately, closed down. They never reopened. I feel like even now the fitness industry, studios especially, are still rebuilding from that type of thing, because at that point in time, everything changed. Everybody took their stuff, like all their fitness classes and everything, online and started doing live, like Instagram live workout classes, and then streaming and join my online workout class. And a lot of people were like, oh, I don't really have to go into a studio. I can just go online and work out. Like, so I feel like it changed it changed a lot of businesses and just the way we did things. And so a lot of them haven't reopened. So I'm kind of like in this phase of rebuilding wholesale. And in the midst of it all, like I pivoted into business coaching, helping other brand owners develop brand awareness, a brand like identity, not just buy my product. It's not just about the product you sell. It's about being like building community, building connection. People want to feel like they're part of something now versus prior to COVID. People, we were all just busy, but going, just like, oh, I want this. So you weren't really thinking. I think consumers, just humans, because that's what we all are, we've changed. Like our attitude toward a lot of things have changed since then. And so it's just, I'm helping other business owners do the branding thing. And then at the time, like these past couple of years, I was in a really burnt out mode when it came to SLR. I feel like when you work so hard for something, and then when we all experienced it, the world shuts down and you're like, oh crap, like what am I supposed to do now? And then that's how it was. But luckily I had those opportunities with like Oprah, Pop Sugar, that were still kind of helping get the word out. And so my online business started picking up from there. And I don't know, I just like, I know you asked the question. Now I don't know what question it was. I don't know if I'm answering it, but it is just the pivot. Like I think these past couple of years have been a pivot. I'm not the same person as I was when I first started SLR. I met my husband, when I was like 3 years ago. Like, so met him, we got married last August, in 2023. So a lot of things have like really moved differently in my life. I mean, being married for the first time at 40, what was I, 43, 44? I'm 45 now. So yeah, it's just, I just think a lot of things have shifted and changed my outlook on like success and what I want. I was in the Delulu when I first started, like, oh, I want to be the next Lululemon. Now I'm just like, oh, I love doing this. I love designing. My creativity has kind of come back in the past couple of months, like past like 9 months or so, and just the drive to kind of rebuild and just kind of be more of a community brand, more of a fun brand, not so much of like the hustle that goes behind when you first start out, which I guess it's a luxury, like a little bit. I mean, because I have put that blood, sweat, and tears into my brand. So now that I have kind of pivoted and now I'm revamping and doing all these things, I still have my community, that connection that I've built all these years that people have invested into SLR. And I'm really thankful for that. That's one thing that I did very well, I think, was that bringing people in and letting them know that like, you're spending your money with SLR, like it means the world to me, because that's kept me in business. That kept me from having to go get another job when I was barely making it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, even like you're saying, so you were, you're doing all this hustle, building it up, and then you were hitting a burnout, even though you still loved this and were passionate. And then you had to make a pivot. And like you said, in entrepreneurship, that is so much of part of it is pivoting when something is working great, but then if it's not, or you just need to shift because life circumstances change, and so you're going to shift with that, and you still love it, but it's okay. So I want to also address a few things that we spoke about too, just little age moments. When you started your company at 36, and you had told me that you never said your age before because you felt like you were too old. Why is that, do you think?
Well, I think it's just society, honestly. I think I've been doing a lot of thinking back to like the early 2000s and just the way that the media, society, magazines basically made us feel like in terms of, you need the perfect body to be able to do XYZ. That was in our faces so much. And then it was always like youth and like, the young, you've got to be young to make it and just like another pretty face type thing. I think, when I started, I think I was just, I think I just felt like people were like, oh, like you're 36. That's just old. Because back then, this 2015, 2016, I still think that stigma around age was so big. And coming from a place too, that you're just like with the organization, like especially working with the cheerleaders all the time and being like, it's just young. It's like you need to be like this to be successful in a sense. I don't know. I think it's just a weird way that the media, society, all the things, just how we grew up, us like Gen Xers and elder millennials, like it was just kind of driven to us like this is what success was. Like you needed to be young, you needed to be fit, you needed like after 30, everything was downhill. And I think I was just so embarrassed because I was 36, never been married, no kids. So I did not fit the typical box of a lot of people, especially a lot of my friends. I mean, they were married, they had kids, and they were doing that white picket fence thing. And then I was just over here, like, I just felt very like an old maid in a sense.
Yeah. Did you, at that time when you were feeling these things and your friends around you were married and starting to have kids, did you feel, this may be too broad of a question, but did you feel like, oh, this is never going to happen to me? And was it a woe is me, or was it a like, not woe is me, I'm sad, but I've got my business? Like, do you remember kind of how you felt around all of that?
I think I had both those sides of it. I think there was a lot of times probably the woe is me, especially like being out in the dating world and like just the losers, like, you meet and you're like, oh my God, this is never going to happen. This is who I have to pick from. Like, what is happening? And then one thing about me, I never was the type, like me and my best friend, like we met in college and she was always like, I just can't wait to get married. I want the kids. I want, the picket fence, all the things. And she got married right out of college. She's still married. She has 3 kids. Like, I mean, all the things. I was never that girl of, oh, I have my dress picked out. I want this. I have my kids' names. It was just always like, oh, I think I just want to like have a career and do the things, but not that so much. So that was never really in my like thinking of, oh, well, now I've got to find a guy to fill in all these little blanks that I have for myself. But I think that I know a lot of my friends kept saying, oh, I think this is your year. If I was like 28, 30, like, no, this is your year, Stace. This is your year. And I was like, let's not say that. Let's just nod. Like, I think it's going to be my year because you don't see the kind of guys that I'm meeting. And it's just not, it's not going to be my year. Like, I mean, Dallas is a hard place to be single. I always say that to people. And so, yeah, no, I think I had both. I was like, there was a lot of woe is me moments. And there was a lot of like, well, I'm glad I don't have to, deal with that. And I laugh now that like, as I married for the first time and like people are now like, my friends, like they're going through like their second divorce or they're doing this. And I'm like, well, I guess you just should have waited till your 40s and then like you're here. And so it's like, yes, like it feels right. I don't know. My path has never been like anybody else's path. So I think everything does happen for a reason, especially I can say that now that I've like seen it. And now that I look back on everything that I went through, I'm like, oh, God had such a plan. And my husband that I'm with, I mean, it's like, we're perfect for each other. Everything just fits. Everything just works. It's just one of those things that it's like, God had a hand in where I'm at and how we met and all the things and the age.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
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 Yeah. And to touch base too with like you saying, okay, at 44, you got married for the first time. And something that you just mentioned as well. Like you said, you felt like you had done everything out of the norm. Like it was just your path has always been just different. You said you used to say that you can't buy a house until you're married, but eventually you realized you can't wait until any perfect moments to start synchronizing. You touched this a little bit too, but I'd love to hear more. What do you think has changed in your philosophy on age, your age specifically, and then just the timelines that we all create?
I remember saying that like, I didn't want to buy a house until I was married. Like that's one thing I feel like I just never wanted the responsibility of. It's like, no, I need a husband to do that. Like, what do you mean? I can't do that by myself. Yeah, I think honestly, especially when turning 40 and then just kind of navigating the ups and downs of business and like being at the peak and like going, and then just all crashing down and then kind of revamping, pivoting. I learned a lot about myself in that process. And I just think that like, I don't know why we have such just this weird thing with age, because I think that as I've gotten like older, I've gotten better. And I mean, obviously just my life experiences, I have all that to pull from now. I just said that to somebody else the other day. I was like, I would not want to go back to being 26 years old. That 26-year-old me was like such a hot mess that I'm like, I would not want to go back to her. Even my 36-year-old me, I was a hot mess. But it was the growth that now that I'm going to be turning 46 in January, it's like, wow, like I can honestly feel like a lot of the stuff that I have been like holding on to all these years with just being a girl for one, and being just in the especially the fitness industry, just being like, you need to look this way, you need to do this, you need just stand there, look pretty type thing, like good old boys club. Like I don't know. It's a good spot to be in when you're not like harping and thinking, I'm too old for this. Like I always had that rule in my head from that movie. Like, am I too old to be here? It's I'm not too old to be here. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
No, I don't.
oh, I'll have to send it to you. It's
Okay.
from that. Well, I forgot what movie that's from, but she's just like, am I too old to be here? As I walk into a club and the girls she's with are like 20, and they're like, no, you're not. You're fine. It's like, I don't know. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did answer my question. Well, and it's cool too, because like, I feel like there was one moment too where it was just like a perspective shift for me as well. And I think I still talk with people that they struggle with it. And I don't know if this is with you as well, but I feel like age comes up constantly all the time. And women are just so stifled by the age and feeling like they're not where they should be. And I think we've all been there. It can be hard sometimes when you compare. I think it's a comparison issue too, of just what you don't have and you feel like somebody else has, or maybe they do have. And so it's kind of hard with that. And I think that's great that you were able to have that shift and change in that. And I feel like too, just what I've seen on what you've been sharing lately on social media, you've also been sharing kind of a shift in like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, like kind of like what diet culture used to be like, or how we're viewing our bodies. Can you share kind of a little bit of what you've been changing up as well, and kind of why that's been important for you?
Yeah. So for the longest time, I mean, since I was just telling my husband this, was like, so like since I was like 17, there has not been a day that I have lived that I have not wished that I was skinnier or I could fit into those jeans or things like that. And it's just such a sad, I mean, when you look back at all those years, all that energy wasted, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so sad. And I do think that was just the way of the world back then, especially. Not that, I mean, I'm sure, I know it is still like that now on a whole different level, because we didn't have social media in our faces all day, every day. We just had magazines that would get mailed straight to our doorstep and make us feel like crap every month, but it wasn't like on a day-to-day basis. So looking back, especially 17 on, and I've had like eating disorders, all the things like in my 20s, and just kind of shifting from one thing to the next, to like lemon cleanse, to Beyonce diet, to Atkins, to just don't eat, like all the things. And now I really am like I said, I was telling my husband the other day, I was like, I'm at a place now that I'm happy. I'm like, I'm not trying to obtain like this thing that I can't get to, because like nothing was ever like that was never attainable anyways. It's like just being like moving for movement, not moving to be punished because I just ate bread and I need to go jump on the treadmill. And that's how I lived my 20s and my 30s. I mean, working out was punishment up until I found the bar method and started doing bar on a consistent basis. I hated working out. Like I loathed it, but it was a punishment. That's why I looked at it. And now just the shift from finding something that I love doing from bar to spin to now just like, I call them grandma walks, but I am a walking girl all the way. I love going out in my neighborhood and like putting on a vest and just power walking and getting on a treadmill and putting music on and just walking and not caring of how many calories. I used to not get off the treadmill. If my calories were like 212, I was like, nope, I got to wait to 220. And if I went over 221, I have to wait till 230 to get off. It was like these little like games. I'd be like, I can't do this until this. And it just was not fun. And so now I've taking that kind of mentality and I'm turning it into my content because I feel like we all struggled with it. At some point in time, we've had these thoughts and it's not just that. I feel like that's one thing, regardless of where you're at in the world, all the things, like we all have that common ground when it comes to our body image, unfortunately, when we shouldn't, but that's just something that's always been ingrained in us. Like, I feel like even from childhood, it's just like, like, and I think that's why people have such a hard thing with age too, because again, me and my husband had this conversation in the car, like I feel like we always talk about this, but it's like women's age and men's age. Like men, as they age, they get more, handsome and they get grays and it's like, oh, okay. Like he's exciting and it's like, he's older and it's all this stuff. Like, and then women start aging and then they're like, she's old. Like, oh, well, I mean, she looks good for her age. Like, what is that? Like, I think that's the most toxic thing. Like she looks good for her age. What does that even mean? What does that mean? Like, she just looks good. Leave the rest of it out. Like she looks great, period. Not because of her age. And I saw a thing last night on like my reels and it was like something about Jennifer Aniston and people were like the comments. I'm a big comment reader. And I was like, everyone was like, how old is she? Like 60? Like she looks great. And I'm like, who cares? Like take it out, take age out, because you don't see people commenting on George Clooney going, oh gosh, like he's 60. I mean, he looks good for his age. No, there's like, he's hot.
Yeah. He's a silver fox.
He's a silver fox. And it's like, okay, like McDreamy, like, with Patrick Dempsey at that, when he was like, oh, it's like, he's so like, oh, he's hot. Like he just keeps getting better with age. Women, no, you don't hear that. And it's sad.
Right. It is sad. And that's why I think a lot of women too, and that's not what we're talking about, but a lot of women will do things, injections or whatever, and, to each their own, but like, or plastic surgeries so that they look younger. And you don't really see men doing that. I mean, I don't think that many are, but I think it's just, I think it's just this fear. I mean, it's just a fear of aging. So, well, okay. So I want to jump back into, we've talked about you having these different pivots, and you had mentioned earlier too, where you were helping other businesses grow their brands and specifically attracting like 30s and 40s and how they fit into social media. And we talked too earlier, like I just briefly mentioned that you have a podcast, the Sun Lovin Roots podcast, and I know it's on a little break right now, but I'd love to hear just a little bit more about what the podcast offers and as far as this branding that you've been doing and just kind of like this current season that you're in. You're also traveling all the time, which is super fun. So just, share any of that. I'd love to hear.
Yeah. So the SLR podcast, it's on a little break right now, but the revamp, my vision is basically just being a place to talk about things like this, like to talk about like the healing ourselves from the diet culture and industry from back in the day, to branding, to business, to just really little bits of everything. My vision is big for it, but I really don't like to put myself in boxes anymore, because I feel like when I do that, it's like I pigeonhole myself and I'm like, well, it has to be this. Like I can't talk about anything else because I talk about this. So it's just going to be kind of like just like the vibe of Sun Lovin Roots. Like when I first named Sun Lovin Roots, it was all about, sun, being happy with yourself, loving the skin you're in, roots, fueling your body with nourishing food. and also accepting where you've been in the past, like where you're rooted from, but knowing that you can change it. That's the whole mantra around Sun Lovin Roots. And I just want to bring that into a podcast form to where we basically could talk about a lot of things, bringing guests on and just having these types of conversations about like what women are doing and how we are just changing the game a little bit, and just having like, we're all the same. We're all different, but we're all the same. We all have a lot of commonality, and that we should be celebrating that versus trying to make division, and like, we're not competition, which I feel like that was a big thing growing up. I feel like, you know, we were all like, so we were raised to be competitive against other women. If someone was succeeding, then that was taken away from you. And it's taken me a lot of years to kind of recover and get through those like weird things. And then working with business owners, I love working with new business owners, especially those with a product based business like I have, just helping them navigate, for the most part, helping them like discover their own brand and discover their voice within their brand. And a lot of business owners don't really want to put their face on camera, and it's not really about putting your face on camera, but it's about doing that connection and not leading with the product, but leading with what your brand represents. So like with Sun Lovin Roots, so it's like leading with all those things that the brand is versus just activewear. Like anybody can go buy activewear type of stuff. And so yeah, that, and then just really, you know, revamping SLR. I just recently opened up my new ambassador program. So I'm growing that. My ambassadors are going to be essentially just like the legs and arms of SLR, where we meet once a month, just have this little community of ambassadors who are all over the world. Some are fitness instructors, some just love working out, but it's a whole different group of women coming together. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that takes off and how that grows. And as well as just traveling with my husband. I'm lucky to be able to tag along with him while he's working. I am working, but I get to experience all these different places that he has to go to work. And I'm just doing a little bit of SLR, but also exploring and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. I think, you know, with age and all that stuff, it's like I said, when you're in it, you don't know, and you're looking, you're like, woe is me. Like, I just don't understand what my life's doing it. But once you get to where you're supposed to be and how things just start falling into place, and sometimes I look around and I'm like, I don't even know who that 36-year-old girl was. Like, I looking at myself now, I'm like, wow, like, it really is a balance. And it does, I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy to do kind of like a full circle.
Yeah, it's really neat for you to be able to go back and just reflect on like the mindset shift and what you've been able, I mean, you've accomplished so much professionally, and then also just personally of realizing and acknowledging and appreciating the age you're in, the life experiences that you have. I'm curious to know, I did not prep you with this one, and so I'm just curious to know kind of off the cuff what you think about this. I'll talk with other women too who, I'm all about like chasing after your goals, doing whatever you want, no matter your age. And some women will say, yeah, sure, but like, I don't have these big aspirations. I don't have these huge goals. So when thinking of that, just what are your thoughts for a woman who still is like limited by her age, but is just like, there's nothing grand that I want to do. This kind of ties into my last question too. So what do you think you would say to that person?
I mean, I think that's great. I don't think we're all meant to have these like big, like huge dreams. And even before me and my husband, I feel like I was kind of going down this path anyways. I'm just like, I just kind of just want to be like, I don't really want to be out there grinding. I don't want to be in my masculine energy all the time. It's exhausting. And I do laugh, and I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, I just want to be a professional +1. Like, I don't really like, I do have a little bit of fire, and I'm like, ooh, I want to do this with SLR. I want to do this, but it's not like it was back in 2015 where I'm like, nope, we're doing this. We're going to be the next Lulu. Like, let's go. Like my Delulu was all over the place. And I was like, I am doing this. And now I'm like, hey, like I have a little bit of it, but honestly, like I just want to be happy. I just want to be able to, I don't want to be tied down to social media. I don't want to be on social media all the time. I want to be able to like do what I want to do, connect with people, have my community offline and build and do something that way, but not so like, I think it's completely fine not to have those big aspirations because, I mean, I don't think it's meant for all of us. And I don't think there's a book out and I forgot who it's by, but it's like, you can't have it all. And I really don't think women can have it all. I don't think that you can have the huge career, have the great marriage, have the kids and do it all because you're always going to be missing something. Like there's just so many. I was talking to my best friend about this too. I was like, because she's like, I just wish, feel like I need to be doing more. And I'm like, you've been raising kids for the past like 19 years. Like what, like, but that's huge. Like that's a big deal. And she's like, I don't know. I just feel like I need to be doing more. I'm like, but why makes you feel that way? She said, well, because I don't know. It's just, I feel like that's what I'm being told. And I'm like, that's weird because you're doing a lot. And you also, once your kids are out, you're going to have the next 20 years to do whatever you want. But I just think that like, it's just the messaging that we're given, like you should be doing all this stuff. And I just don't really know if it's really, if you can have it all and be able to do everything and not miss something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Cause I mean, something has to lack, whatever that may be. And you don't have to, I think whether it's social media or just society, we feel like we have to like do all these grand things and it's exciting that, that you can attain that. And, but that's not everybody's story. So, well, Stacey, I have my last question and then I'll have you share where everyone can find you. So it does relate to the previous question, but it's still tackling that negative mindset, the limitations that we can easily place on ourselves. So if you could encourage one woman who does feel blocked or limited to pursue a dream or goal, and it doesn't have to be big everybody, but if you could encourage them who feels blocked based on her age or life circumstance, what would you tell her?
Well, I would just say, just start. Just like, I feel, and I've done it too. I feel like we overthink. I mean, women do overthink. We all overthink, which is not, it's good and bad, all the same. But I think that we overthink, oh, I want to do this. And you feel like you have to have everything perfect. And that's what I've come to find out, even with my own self doing SLR. There's some times that I haven't done what I needed to do because I didn't feel like it was perfect, or I didn't feel like everything was like ready to go. And I feel like when you show up, you just start, you do it messy, you do it uncomfortable, you just do it. I was telling one of my ambassadors the other day, because she was like, I just feel very uncomfortable. I don't really know how to do the cute little videos. And I'm like, just put your phone down and just start filming yourself. That you just put it down and just start. Like, don't overthink it. And then look at the video. And if you're like, I don't know, then just put it down again and do it again. But just set a timer, do it for 5 minutes, and then be done with it. And then from those 3 minutes of video, you can clip something down to like 5 seconds and have a video. It's not like you just got to start. And I feel like that's what I would tell anybody. Just start messy, start raw, just start. If you're like, I just want to start sharing my life on social, on Instagram. Okay, just start doing it. That's the easiest, toughest thing, advice to do. It's the easiest, but the toughest, because it's so hard to start. But once you do, the universe, the energy that you're putting out, you're going to get it back. It's like, it's not stagnant. It's not overthinking. It's like you're putting that out and it's going to be rewarded. It's going to come back around and it's going to start moving things. Even if you're getting in front of one person and one person likes it, one person comments, guess what? That's one person that's invested and resonated with something that you put out and that you helped them with. So I know it's simple but hard, but just start and don't overthink it.
Yep.
I mean,
I love it.
Yeah.
Yep. Just got to go messy. That's
gotta
what we got to do.
messy.
Just start it.
Yeah. Just do it messy.
Yeah. All right. Well, Stacey, people can find you sunlovinroots.com and your Instagram is sunlovinroots. Anything else that I'm missing?
No, it's actually shop sunlovinroots.com, the
Thank you.
website, but it'll direct it either way. And then, yeah, Sun Lovin Roots on Instagram. And yeah, I think that's it. That's where I'm at.
All right. Well, listeners, you need to check out her activewear. It's so cute. It's so unique. I love it. Stacey, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining me today on the More Than Your Age podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. If you were encouraged by today's episode, like and subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. You can find me on all of the socials at More Than Your Age. Keep striving for your goals, live fully, and we'll catch you next time on the More Than Your Age podcast. If you are joining me at the end of the show, thank you. I am starting something new. I'm hoping it'll continue on this season, so maybe if you're a listener, you can hold me accountable to this. If you have been a listener for a while and have listened to episode 2, which is my Why I'm Doing This podcast, you might recall that I shared that this podcast is not a faith-based podcast, but I am a woman of the Christian faith and often interview many women who would claim to be Christians as well. They follow Christ. I also have women who do not adhere to that same faith. And in various episodes, whether a woman is a Christian or not, we may or may not talk about faith in that specific episode. So I thought, well, I do want to incorporate my faith into the episodes in some capacity. And I thought, well, you know what? What I'll do is I will share some things at the tail end of each episode that either they might relate to what we discussed with my guest, or it might just be something that I'm learning that specific week that I just like to share with you, my listeners. And I pray, as a Christian, I pray. I've been praying about more ways to be bold in my faith. And I think that this podcast is one of the ways that I can be more bold in my faith. If you've made it to the end and are listening, thank you. Whether you and I share the same beliefs or not, I hope you can find additional encouragement in this section. And like I said, whether it relates to the podcast episode or not, I still hope you can find encouragement in this. And so, like I said, something I've been praying for is to have more boldness in my faith. Why is that? Well, if I say that I'm a Christian and I truly believe in what I say I believe, then I want people to know and have an authentic relationship with Christ, Jesus Christ. You see, I believe that we as people, every single one of us, even the nicest person in the entire world, the nicest person that you know, we have a bent towards what I like to tell my kids. We have a bent towards making bad decisions against God, which, if you're familiar with this word, is called sin, according to God. These bad decisions or this sin can be as small as wishing you owned the house that woman owns because it's so much prettier and nicer than yours, and that's not fair that she gets to have it. Or maybe you just really, really, really wish you had it and wish that you didn't have the one you had. To maybe hating or disliking strongly whichever political figure you strongly disagree with, all the way to murder and adultery. So these choices that we make ultimately separate us from the God who created us. He wants us to live a fulfilled life through him. But you and I'm included in this, we do the things that we want to do, and therefore we are separated from him. And this has happened throughout all of history, a good chunk of history, all of it. So God's plan was to send somebody who could do no wrong and face the death punishment that we basically deserve. This is the all-powerful Son of God, Jesus Christ. The wrath that we deserve was placed upon Jesus when he died on the cross. And when he conquered death, he proved he truly was part of the triune God, the Messiah. And when we put our faith in him, our hope is in him. We are no longer held under the punishment that separates us from a perfect God. You see, because God is perfect and so good, he cannot be with what is not good. And so because of what Christ did, we get to have that relationship with him. And so this is important. This is my most important thing in life that I believe. This is why I'm doing the podcast. I know that my main goal, my passion is to see women to realize and use their gifts, to use what God has given them, and understand that your place here on earth in this season, through hardships you may have, through good times that you may have, was not by accident. And you can do something about it and allow God to work in you. My hope is that you would find the hope that I have in Christ, the freedom to know that no matter what, I have been set free from the punishment I deserve. And I can also know that God's got his hand in my life. I can trust in his goodness and his plan, even when it's hard or when I have no clue what he's doing. And that no matter how old I am or what hard things go on in my life, God got it. He's got it. And that helps me in all of this. I hope this helps you understand a little bit more about my passion and my ultimate hope and why I know you are more than your age. But most importantly, you are loved by a powerful God who wants an authentic relationship with you. If you stayed until the end, thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to reach out. You know where to find me at More Than Your Age on any of the socials. Reach out, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again.